Hello and welcome back to Pennyhill Junction and the first layout update of 2021. Now you might be looking at your screens and thinking, is this Pennyhill Junction on another visit to another layout? But no, that's not the case. Of course it's not. We're all in lockdown at the moment. What this actually is the first scenic section here at Pennyhill Junction. So 4 years after the start of the channel, 2 track plans later, finally during lockdown number 3, I've plucked up the courage to make a start on scenery for the first time on this layout. So in this update, I'll show you some of the work I've done over the last few weeks in this particular area which you see now, which is the approach into the Heritage Station. I'm also going to show you some work that I've started in preparation for building the canal scene on the east end of the layout. Also going to talk through some revised plans for the Mainline Station, and also show you some of the new additions that have arrived at Pennyhill Junction over recent months. And then I'll cover off some of the future plans over the next month or two before ending with a short running session with some of my stock, some of my heritage stock coming through this very first scenic area of Pennyhill Junction. So sit back and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, and here we are at the Heritage Station, and as I mentioned in my previous update just before Christmas, I said that my first real goal of 2021 was to actually start on some scenery on the layout. It's been a long time coming, but as I pan the camera to the left, you'll see that I've been working on this station approach section, which is basically a cutting which comes out of that tunnel mouth, which becomes a scenic break before entering into the main layout. So I'll give you a summary of what I've done to obviously achieve what is here so far. It's far from finished. There's a lot more scenic detail that I need to add. Still more static grass to add, foliage, bushes, additional trees, etc. But as I said, just to summarize what I've done, I haven't videoed step by step carrying out this work. As I said, it's the first time I've done any scenery, any scenic type work before, so I wanted to have an attempt, make sure I got it reasonably good, and then perhaps a future video when I do other areas of the layout, or include some of the sort of step by step of what I've done to achieve these results. So I'll start off with the embankments, which obviously produced this sort of cutting coming out of the tunnel portal there. So you'll see from the side here that these are just made out of insulation foam board, which I've cut to shape. Once I've glued that down in place, I've glued that down onto the baseboard using Gorilla Glue. I've then put a couple of layers of plaster cloth. Then once that's set, I've applied Sculptor mold just to give a bit more of a sort of varied and sort of prototypical earthy landform. And of course it's the same there on both sides. Before attempting to do the sort of ground scatters and grass, I had a few tests on some spare pieces of board. So I'll put a couple of images up on the screen of the test boards that I created for both scatter, or to start with the scatter. Basically what I've used here is, in terms of scatter materials, I've been using some Jarvis dark earth scatter. I've also used Woodland Scenic's fine turf, or the blended turf variety. Also fine turf soil from Woodland Scenics, as well as the fine turf in green. But before applying the scatters, I put a coat on top of the sculptor mold. I put a coat of paint. So I basically use a lightened down burnt umber. So burnt umber acrylic paint, just with obviously a spot of white in there just to tone it down a little bit. And again, I'll put some images on the screen in terms of what it looks like before the scatter goes down. And then I simply lay the scatter in the order as I said. So that I put the Javis dark earth down first, then I'll put down some blended turf, then I'll tone a little bit down with the soil colour, and if there's any areas that I want to sort of brighten up a bit, again I'll just add the green on top. And as you can see from here, but also the test board, it gives a nice variety of shades and a nice base ground colour before applying the static grass. In terms of the static grass, so I've been using model scene grasses. The varieties that I'm using are spring, early summer and green. And you can see by the image on the screen what the three shades look like on a particular test board. What I've used to start with here on this scene is I've only applied one specific grass so far, and this will be the first of obviously many sort of layers or many random patches of grass as I sort of slowly but surely build up this scene here to make it more of a sort of prototypical late spring, early summer landscape. At the moment I've just got 4.5mm early summer flock on both these embankments, but I will be adding, let's say, some of the other colours and a variety of lengths as I start to build up this scene. And of course, in addition to that, particularly along some of the back edges there, I'll start adding some coarse turfs, some foliage, some bushes, etc. And also you'll see some darker earth patches here in these areas along here where I'll be adding some trees. The trees will primarily be in place to block out some of these seams where we have the back scene boards joining. Also here we have the actual back scene itself with a join down the middle. So again, I'll be looking to maybe put a tree in place there to hide that. And in this section here as well, just to disguise that section there. Unfortunately, we're always going to have this area here where I've utilized a sort of wrap around the roof beams, although it doesn't disguise it perfectly. I'm pleased with the result I've achieved here. It's better than, as I say, having a wooden beam coming straight through. From this angle, of course, it's quite evident, it's quite noticeable, but as we go down to track level, you actually see that the scene blends in quite nicely. So any side views, doesn't actually look too bad. And I think once we get another tree in that middle section there, just about here, some of the branches may come out and hide that seam even better. Moving on then to some of the track detailing. So in terms of the ballast to start with, so the ballast I've put down here is Woodland Scenics. It's a fine light grey and also fine buff. It's just a mix of the two, fairly even. Where it's probably about 60-40, 60% grey, 40% buff. Of course, it looks nice, clean and fresh at the moment, but one of the next projects for me is to get this weathered. Also, I need to do a little bit of touching up. There are some areas that are a little bit bare of some ballast, just obviously where I've laid down the IPA and also the glue afterwards. It's just shifted some of the ballast to one side, so there's some spots that I just need to touch up before I start on the weathering. So that's the ballast. As you can see, I've got the cable trunking down one side there. That's the scale model scenery cable trunking. Really impressed with that kit, looks fantastic. In addition to that, I've got scale model scenery catch pits. Of course, remembering that this is a heritage line, so you know, we will see in modern day a mixture of both modern infrastructure as well as dated infrastructure. Hence the reason why I've introduced some of the wheels point rodding kit. That's been added there, and that will of course connect into the signal box. This is not the signal box that will be here permanently. This is just really a mock-up. So this is a Metcalf signal box which I built many years ago, so I'm just using it there really there as a mock-up. So I may be potentially looking to scratch build something unless I find a kit or a resin model which is you know, fairly close to what I'm looking to represent. And we've also got the orange cables. Again, that's come from scale model scenery. And as we carry on down, you'll see there's some further cable trunking which has switched to the other side of the rail, and then obviously goes into the tunnel itself. There's a couple of bits of raised cork bed here. The reason being is that they will hold a couple of the wheels relay boxes. It will be, let me just put them down there. So the kit's been built. I just need to paint them, give them a light weathering, then put them into place. So hopefully that all will be done by the next video. And so now go into those two locations there. I will be putting a plastic hard platform on top of that cork as well, and just to make it look like a little concrete base. And as I said, that's really it for this particular scene. Yes, so that's taken me the best part of about 4 or 5 weeks to complete that scene. I know it's a very small area, but I did take it very slow, take my time. So it's the first time I've attempted anything like this. But so far, so very pleased with the result. It's still a long way to go, so a lot more detail to add, a lot more sort of green scenery. As I said, more static grass to add, trees, bushes, foliage, etc. Coarse turfs to really sort of build up, you know, a nice, as I say, late spring, early summer embankment with lots of nice colours and sort of bushy areas of grass and weeds and flowers, etc. So lots of work still to do. I say it looks a bit bare and patchy at the moment, but I say that will be built up over the coming weeks. But as you see, as I go down closer to track level, you'll see that actually the embankment really does bed in quite well with the trees back scene that I've used. And so once I introduce, you know, some of that foliage along the back of the embankment there as it meets the back scene, as well as introduce some additional trees in the foreground, I think that should all blend in quite nicely. So now progressing left out of the heritage station and back onto the main layout, you'll see another tunnel portal. And this area here, as I mentioned, will be basically the scenic break. So these embankments will sort of continue up to form a hillside, and that hillside will, as I literally come down here, similar sort of colours, you know, spring, summer colours to what we'll see on the embankments, and I said that will break up the two scenes quite nicely. This is likely to be the way I'll continue to go for now. I'll continue to go to the left until we reach this point here, which will be the canal scene. So as you can see, since the last update, I've cut out the sections here from the baseboard, and I've actually managed to attach underneath another section of board as the base of the canal. So I've just put in some templates there in terms of what roughly the bridges will look like. So this will be the idea will be some sort of red brick bridge. This will be a girder bridge for the main lines, and then as I come back round here, this bridge will be actually a road bridge. There'll be some sort of stone, maybe a light stone bridge, possibly a humpback bridge, and there'll be a road coming over here and then just running off the edge of the baseboard, and then after the hillside will then rise up over the tunnel portals. So the idea over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks is to certainly start working on the scratch building of the bridges in this area, start on this hillside as well. Over this area here, again, I've got another a tunnel portal area there. That one I'm going to look to scratch build. So I'm looking at a representation of Parsons Tunnel down at Teignmouth. So I want to do something similar to that, and then have obviously some of the scenery merge into this hillside here. So I might be looking to do some of the red sandstone that we see down in the southwest on the Riviera line, and then that will all just come down into this canal scene. You can already see an early start on the canal embankment there. So as well as planning and preparing for this East End scenic area, I'd say that's going to be a pretty large project in comparison to what I've just done so far. But I said this was a really nice place to start, almost like a bit of a diorama really, but I say a really good place to sort of start and sort of try my hand at sort of scenic skills, and I say I'm impressed with how that's come out so far. But I say I'll be progressing onto a whole nother level here with a much bigger hillside area, and then it also come into the embankment and the introduction of realistic water, etc., as we introduce the canal. Now, I did mention in the December update that I was looking, perhaps as a 2022 project, looking at revising my mainline station. So you can just see as we approach the station here, we've got one bay platform or a disused platform. You can see where the siding is, and then it's basically 3 lines that go through the station. So as you're aware, it was a representation, or was meant to be a representation of Newton Abbot, but I've sort of moved away from that now, and it's going to be much more of an original idea. Still based very much down in the southwest and on the Riviera line. You know, look at some of the sort of station infrastructure, etc. But the station itself will now be very much original and my own idea. So as I come down here, I can just show you a rather crude sketch, but it will just give you some idea of what I'm looking to achieve here. So as you can see, this line here, the heritage line, that will continue to come out as is. At the moment, the heritage line, as you'll see, joins straight onto the main line. But what I'm going to introduce on these revised plans is the heritage line will come into basically as a siding. So that will in some way just introduce an end-to-end heritage station layout, where it will come into this platform here, which will have a small station building specific to the heritage station. And then also, as you can see, there'll be 3 lines then running through the middle. 2 of those lines, of course, will be adjacent to platforms, and then 1 single through line. And then the up line will go up and out, more of a sweeping curve, right up and out towards the back of the baseboard. And then, as you can see now, it used to be the area where it was going to hold the station building, but now I say the upline will simply sweep right out, and this will be, I guess, just a long retaining wall against that back edge of the baseboard. So what that allows me to do, of course, is have a, particularly on this local line, as I've called it here, so there's the up, the down, but on the local line here, it allows me to have trains, DMUs, EMUs, positioned in the platform, and I can then have fast trains potentially sweeping through the middle on non-stopping services. So on this right hand side, I've got various point work in place, of course, which will allow for the changing of lines, etc. Also allow trains to come out of the heritage line and go onto the main line if required. Although this looks relatively short, actually in real scale this will be still quite a long platform, so it could probably still fit a five car unit like a class 800, or the HST Castle set, which is obviously a 2+4 set. So I imagine it could use a Castle set, which has happened previously on the South Devon Railway. They've had a Castle set down there, so I could quite easily put in a Castle set and send that out onto the heritage line. But also it means that I can, without having to manually remove heritage stock, if I want to take it out onto the main line to give the locos a good run, I can do that with relative ease. As you can see there, as I close in, so this is going to be a head shunt, so it means locals will come in, I can uncouple, and then obviously come back round to the rear of the rake of coaches, and then pull it back into the main heritage station. As far as the mainline station goes, as I said, on the previous version of the station, as I just mentioned, the main station building was at this back end here along the back seam board, but now I'm going to create a raised section here and have the station actually up on the raised section, and then we'll probably have lifts, stairs, escalators perhaps coming down to the platforms themselves from this race section, and then behind the station there'll be a bit of a sort of industrial area, not necessarily industrial, more of a retail, so something like a drive-through and a petrol station, something like that behind the station and station car park. So that's the plans that I've got for the main station area. As I said, I'm looking to perhaps do that in 2022, but there's every chance that if things progress well on this east end side of the layout, as they are doing so now, I may consider doing at least the track work before next year. And finally, on these revised station plans, before everyone goes crazy in the comments, you may ask yourself, well, why is there point work on this side but not on that side of the layout? Well, actually, as this comes on to more of a straight, there's already existing point work on the layout which will allow trains to switch lines. So that's why there's none of that point work on the bend there, is because I obviously have the point work on this side of the layout already in place. I don't have the point work on this area here because I wanted to keep that sort of relatively clear of point work, so that at some point when this scenery is done, there'll be nice sweeping curve there. As I come down, you'll have the canal scene, see a heritage railway as well, and hopefully that will, once it's all built up and sort of merging into the back scene, that will create for quite a nice shot as trains sort of come out and go into the tunnel area, with all this nice rural scenery. So that's why I've tried to keep that relatively sort of point 3, and as I do all the point work on the curve, which I'll do on the revised plans also. So moving away from the layout itself now, I'm just going to touch on some recent additions to the layout. The first of which you have seen on obviously the introduction to the video, which is this loco in front of you here. So this is class 57 602, and that's Ristormore Castle. So the second loco I bought for Pennyhill Junction back in 2017 was 57603 Tintagel Castle. So the tooling is identical from what I can gather, but the application of the livery on this model is very different. Bachmann have gone for the application of a gloss livery, and I think they've done a fantastic job. So it really does look nice on this particular loco. Shame they didn't do it with the previous one on Tintagel Castle. But I mean, it's not as though they'll run sort of together, double-headed. They'll both be, the likelihood is they'll both be pulling Riviera sleeper chains individually, so it won't be too much of an issue. But again, as I find with all my Bachmann locos, particularly the diesel locos, you know, fantastic runner, highly detailed and superb application of the livery. And I'll move across, as I mentioned briefly in the December video, I've got the addition of the Hornby Class 50s in the controversial GBRF livery, and I think it's clear to see from here. And you know, we've seen it well publicised on various social media platforms that the Hornby GBRF blue is far lighter than the prototype, but I think I still agree. You know, these Hornby Class 50s are still fantastic locos, albeit the wrong colour. Delivery application is still absolutely spot on. And I say the locos themselves, again, excellent runners. What I've added, so I already had a BR Lakecrest Chocolate and Cream Mark 1, and I've added a couple of the Crimson and Cream Mark 1s as well. The idea eventually is to create a rake of coaches which will be a representation of the Terminator Phoenix tour from back in 2019. So I've still got several more coaches to get before I get to that rake. And then finally, I mean, this has actually come to the layout in summer of last year, but I say the updates from myself were fairly scarce during the summer month last year. So again, I did touch on this in December. So this arrived in the summer of last year. So this is Bachmann L92 pannier in the London Transport livery. And this loco does currently reside at Buckfastleigh Station on the South Devon Railway, which of course is what I'm loosely looking to represent here on this heritage line. Right, well, that's all this month from here at Pennyhill Junction, and you know, I'm extremely pleased to finally have some scenery on the layout, albeit a very small section and you know, far from complete. You know, I'm so pleased that I've finally sort of plucked up the courage to have a crack at doing scenic work, something I've put off for far too long. And you know, will give me the confidence now to go on and do bigger and better projects on the layout. So excuse the pun, talking of heritage lines, but it's very much for me now, I think, sort of full steam ahead. You know, I've managed to sort of collect a lot of materials that I need to continue with the scenic work across the east end of the layout. So there's nothing to hold me back now. So I'm going to push on over the next month, and then hopefully as we get to the end of March or early April, I'll be in a position to provide you with another update on how things are progressing. But for now though, I'm going to leave you with a short running session of just some, obviously, the heritage stock and some of my new stock as well, coming in and out of the station here on the Heritage Line. And so yeah, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and enjoy this running session coming up, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. But until then, take care, stay safe, and bye for now.